thanks to everyone for coming on Thursday afternoon. We were initially a little disappointed with the last time slot of the day, but since it's faculty salaries, we figured that people might come, and so we're appreciative of everybody coming in. We're going to talk about two topics, the work-life part of our survey as well as the faculty salaries. I'll go through the work-life slides first. I have no conflicts, and I am representing the benchmark committee of AAAEM. And in this particular area, we are going to talk about some overall work-life questions that we asked, as well as our faculty survey, salary survey. And so the first interesting thing is over a 6-year window, you saw about a 5% swing of effort from academic endeavors to clinical endeavors. And so this is pressure that we feel from the revenue side on the academic endeavors that we're doing. And at the same time, partially due to COVID, we see a decline in the overall faculty hours due to a decline in the patient volumes, and the arrivals per faculty hour are also declining. And so what you see there is a 4% overall decline. And so one of the things we then looked at is how do the hours per rank compare? And what you start to see is as people advance in rank, the number of clinical hours go down, and your clinical hours go up the further away you get from the academic center. And when we look at the main ED, we see that our attending hours are about a third, with the balance divided about 80% to the residents and 10% to the APPs. And then when we look at the total ED, adding in the fast tracks in those areas, you see that the faculty hours stay about a third, but more APP hours are added. And so then when we look at the hours per day, on the right-hand side, what you're really seeing is that the attending and APP hours, there are no resident hours in that. So that's a difference that we see there. And then in talking about the residency, one of the things that we are tracking is the 3-year residencies versus the 4-year residencies, and the productivity from the residents in each of those years. All of this information is available through your administrator if you're a participating site in the survey at a detailed level. If you're not a participating site, we have these slides out, and we can also give you overall information from the survey. And feel free to reach out to me or any of the other administrators. We would love to get sites that are not participating to participate. And so then you can also see we're tracking by job families the amount of hours that people are working within those job families. We also this year added a wellness survey, and so it was interesting to us the percentage of institutions that are funding dedicated faculty wellness protected time, about 1 shift a month, and that only about 20% of the sites have dedicated wellness staff. And when we look specifically at the domains that people were looking for to talk about wellness, they really fell into 3 groups, where there was like wellness, burnout, and financial health that most places were talking about, and then about 3/4 of the places were kind of more personal things to the individual faculty, and then kind of broader things, about half of the sites we're talking about. And so now we're going to transition and talk about the faculty salary survey. And we're representing about 2,500 faculty in this survey, and you can see kind of the median years within their institution and post-residency. And so what you start to see in this chart, which is a 5-year trend, is that the faculty in years 5 through 9 are increasing, whereas when we look at the out years, 15 through 19, they're decreasing, and then you're flat in the first couple years. And so we're seeing a shift in the demographics of the years from residency of the faculty that are reported in the survey. You can kind of see that we're slowly shifting to associates and a decline over the last 5 years from assistants as more people are promoted. Our gender is declining slightly over the last 10 years by about 6%, moving from male to female as we see growth in the specialty. And when we look at total salary, this is all compensation. So we're now talking about your base compensation, your incentive plans, administrative differentials, everything here. This number on the bar or on the line chart is including chairs and chiefs, and we noted that it's slightly lower when you exclude the chairs and chiefs. And you can sort of see there was a decline at the beginning. And feel free to take pictures, but also I loaded the slides and they're on the, if you just have the app, you can pull them up, and your administrator also happy to distribute them to you.
Does that include benefits value?
That does not include benefits. We have the benefits on, I think, 2 or 3 slides from now. Benefits, I think, are about $70,000 a year above that. So then here, what you can start to see on the red line is your base salary versus your total compensation in the blue line. And you can kind of see your base salary trended over the last number of years. So we're seeing a little over 2.5% increase across the last 5 years in terms of total comp and base comp. And now you see the trend of the no chief and chair salaries excluded, and you can see the rate of increase has increased more in this domain in the last 2 years than in the overall. And again, we're taking the base salary as a percentage of total comp. So what you're starting to see is your at-risk components of compensation are increasing over the last 5 years. So less of your salary is protected, more of your salary is at risk. And this is looking at first-year salaries for faculty, which are increasing disproportionate to total faculty salaries. So junior entry-level salaries are increasing at a higher rate than the overall salaries in the survey. And this shows you the mean salaries by rank, and you can see that the rate of increase is pretty consistent. There was a decline on the instructors about 3 years ago, and then it's caught up and surpassed that at this point. And that shows you the percentage of base versus the percentage of total, so the at-risk is about the same regardless of rank. And then when we look at the salaries by region, you can start to see that they are grouped within about an 8% range across the 4 regions, with the West region being the highest. And when we look at where you practice, you make more money in a community setting or at a freestanding site than you do at an academic site. There is a correlation in your number of clinical hours where you work less clinical hours. So there's a correlation where you work more clinical hours, you make more money. This is the per diem rates that we're paying, and then a night differential for the per diem rates and the per diem rates for the APPs. Again, all of this information is available overall on the salary, and you can work with your administrators to get that. We also went, I've got just a few more slides and then I'll go to questions. And I'm happy to stay as long as anybody would like for questions. In terms of compensation plans, we actually looked, there's basically 4 different ways. There's a salary only, and then there's a 2-component where there's stipend and bonuses, a 3-component where you get a stipend and a bonus in addition to your base, and then a 4-component where you have the extra plus the stipend plus your bonus. And as we started to look at the number of institutions that have this, what you can start to say is the more components you have in the plan and the more you're relative to at risk, the higher your overall comp is. So as people accept more risk into the comp plan, there is higher overall compensation within the comp plan. And this is kind of dividing out across the whole survey how those components divided out. So this was the $70,000 of benefits cost that we talked about. The bonus averaging about $30,000 or just under 10% of the total comp. And then stipend, administrative duty pay, or your extra hours. And I realized that was really fast, and I am now open for questions.
Do you have any data in terms of pay differences by gender?
The question was, and I'm going to talk into the microphone because they're recording this and they want to get the questions, but the first question was, are there differences in gender that we track? And the answer is, the data set is at the detailed faculty level, so we can stratify it by rank, by gender, by years out. So yes, there are differences. The other, one of the things that we did find was for those institutions that had like a children's hospital where they were PEM-trained faculty, the salaries were significantly different. So you can see on a couple of the slides, we actually footnoted that those salaries were excluded. And those faculty were disproportionately female. Yes, sir.
So some details on the, can you provide some details on the components of the salary? So one of them is extra hours, and it was like 19,000. And is that saying that on average, all of the faculty across all the sites here were doing that much extra hour work, which kind of surprises me? And so why don't you start with that one, then I'll ask you about stipend versus bonus.
So that's a mean for all compensation. So for extra hours, you could have someone at your site that is at 50,000 and someone that's at 10, and the average would be 30.
But that is the average using a mean across all the faculty.
Correct.
Et cetera. And then the difference between stipend and bonus, what's your definition of a stipend?
So the stipend would be for roles. So your associate chair gets $30,000 to be the associate chair.
And if they're no longer the associate chair, that stipend presumably goes away.
Correct.
And so that's what we mean by that. And then bonus, do you have much details on bonuses? Is that a performance productivity based bonus?
It differs by site, and we didn't stratify it out in those instances. So at my site, it is not tied to clinical work. At other sites, it is.
What is it tied to at your site, if not clinical work?
So we have 6 shares. There are 3 team goals and 3 individual goals. So one of the team goals is the number of publications. One of the individual goals is the number of educational value units, the amount of work they're doing for the residency. Other questions?
Just for the benefits, like just for the benefits, just what components are in there?
So this would be retirement match, your health insurance, your your typical benefits, Social Security would be included as part of that. Any components that you're paying institutionally that are not in your salary lines.
Like how much the health insurance is being weighed at?
At my institution, it's about $7,000. So I can speak for an N of 1.
Each department puts in that information based on that, and then that is what is the mean of everybody's benefits together.
And it'll be higher, like Social Security is 7.65%, but it caps at an income level. So the higher your overall salaries are, as the percentage will go down over time. Other questions? All right, well, we would be delighted to partner with you in presenting this information to your site, working with your administrators. We'd be even more delighted if your site does not participate in our survey. If you would participate in our survey, we get about 80 of the 130 sites that are currently submitting data.
Do you have a list of who participates?
I do, but not with me. And if you send an email to any one of us, the speaker's email addresses are in the presentation. So Greg or I could follow up on that with you. All right. Thanks very much. Oh, yes, sir.
Can you go back to that slide where you looked at the increase in salaries over the last few years? By rank?
Yeah. This one?
I'm just curious because given all the kerfluffle that's happened the last 2 years in terms of, no jobs with pandemic and then jobs, I'm surprised that instructor pay went up significantly. It appears to have gone up significantly at the same time that supposedly we didn't have jobs for everybody.
Yeah, so one, this would be people that got jobs. And two, it's, when it says 2021, it's June of 2021 data for when they would have been starting. So they're, yeah.
I need to check. Is there any data on like the range of salaries and the range of benefits, or you just have the means of it?
So this a little bit depends on how your site participates. If your site participates, you have the keys to the kingdom, and there is an online portal that your administrator can log into, and you can see the distribution at a very granular level. From a sample size perspective, you'll never be able to get down to where you could figure out a person's salary, but you can see, by region and by rank, and as we talked earlier, by sex. So that is granular. If you're not a participating site, you would have less ability to do that. Other questions?
So the basis, so this is total. Again, this is, I'm just saying, that's what you're saying. This is total for the total salary, right? Out there.
Yes, this is, yes, this is mean salary.
301, 333, those are
Yes, this includes all components, yes.
And you include the total, you also include the extra per diem dollars, right?
Correct.
So it's all boosted in there, right?
Yes, and again, if you participate in the survey, you have the ability to stratify out by different components. So you can start to look at your comp plan versus others. I'll be right back to the question in front.
So I know you did it by region. Do you ask for cost of living from each institution? Because that would vary within the region as well.
We do not do that, although one of the things that you can do when you set up your peer groups is you can pick which institutions are in your peer group. So if you're in New York or Boston, you could select a certain peer group to get that type of information.
Things like CME money would fall under benefits?
CME money would, CME money would not be captured in this. That's not a compensation at most institutions. It's not included in compensation. Yeah. The data set is quite rich. This is looking at it from a salary perspective, but you could go into operational metrics. You can look at research metrics. It's a valuable tool. Happy to partner with
So
your.
how do you get into it to look at that? Like, I have a question about the additional benefits that are part of salary for going to meetings, CME, and all those sorts of things. So how do you access that in the database?
So as with any database, it's field specific. So you can basically run a table with the elements that you're looking at for the sites that you're looking at to get the stratification, and then you'd see the variations. So in general, it shows you like.
Yeah, well, I think there's, isn't it a link through the academic chairs?
Roundtable analytics.
Yeah.
So really the key is connecting administrators to the AAAEM and participating in the survey, because that's how you gain access to this information. Easiest.
Do only administrators have access to that if they're signed up, so to
If
speak?
you participate, you
Yeah.
have full access.
Okay.
And I will say that it's daunting sometimes if you haven't gone into the system to go into the system. The Roundtable Analytics team does webinars. They'd be happy to partner with your teams locally to do that. And we have buddy systems within the submission process where there's a seasoned person, many of them sitting here, that would partner with your administrator to help them get the data submitted if they haven't historically done that. Other questions?
Did you say that the regional variation at each rank, was that plus or minus 8%, or was it 8% sort of like the total spread between the total?
Yeah. The total spread of the regional variation was 8% from high to low. I think there were two basically in the middle, and one that was 4% down and one that was 4% up. Other questions?